Part of this work for tiny stadiums are different assemblages in what I like to call unsung spaces, so forgotten spaces around Erskineville that are essential to making up the whole community but are often forgotten or overlooked or quickly walked past. I've noticed that Erskineville is quite a transient place, and so I wanted to create a work that really responded to that in terms of creating a contradictory experience where my works were quite still and brought people to linger and explore these forgotten spaces instead of just walking past quickly. And when I was exploring Erskineville by foot myself in preparation for this body of work, I came from the train station area, and I noticed the first thing I noticed about Erskineville was this kind of abandoned area right where the shops start and where it meets the railway, and it's just a really interesting in-between space, and so that was definitely a space I wanted to respond to. It was unsure who it belonged to. It was storing garbage bins and people's kind of collected discarded objects, and it was locked up, so it was chained up, so this kind of, you know, really unprecious items being locked up is very interesting. And but I just noticed as I stood there that people were walking past and not really noticing it. Walking around the shops as well, I noticed shapes within the shops. For instance, at the fruit village, where they obviously sell fruit and veggie, there were these boxes and containers that were housing this fresh produce, but they also could operate as spaces for other items to function inside. And so I approached them and asked them if I could kind of reinvent their forgotten spaces in a way, these spaces that house everyday materials but could potentially be something else in there. In my practice, I've been exploring time within the installation environment, and I've been exploring moving, ephemeral and still time in conjunction with each other. And this is the first opportunity I've had to actually explore that in a public space. Beforehand, I've been working inside the gallery context in a very kind of stilled and controlled environment. In terms of investigating or discovering these forgotten spaces, I wanted to bring, I guess, an added layer of life to them through my assemblages, which are kind of these investigations between something very complex, like different layers of time, the ephemeral, the moving and the still, and place them in spaces that, you know, are very transient, that people just walk past. So it's kind of like bringing an added value to them, and by bringing art or placing a concept or an idea on top of them, and almost what I like to call creating like a memorial to these spaces. So all the work and the materials and the kind of the cost of the materials that go into making a work like this, and then applying them to these spaces which are usually unnoticed and forgotten, is a way of kind of acknowledging the part that they play in informing the whole. I often approach my art, or in this case for this festival, I approached the piece as a painter. So I was looking at space as if I was a painter. So the buildings, I saw lines and compositions, and like a painting, there's also negative spaces, the spaces you don't first up see in a painting, but actually balancing and holding the whole piece together. So similar with this project, I wanted to acknowledge those negative, forgotten spaces and the role they play in making a whole.
So the use of the words like to honour, to bestow value, and before you said like to create a memorial.
That's right, yeah.
I think that's really interesting. And if you put that next to thinking about these spaces as part of a whole or something like that.
Yeah, I've worked in the art worlds in an institution as an educator for a number of years, and I've been a practicing artist as well, working and exhibiting within gallery contexts. I realised there was a certain level of expectation or value associated with different materials or different heights, you know, an artist can achieve, and often that's equated to the amount of, you know, commercial success or or money that can be gotten from a particular artwork. And I guess just in response to that, just realising that there's so much value inherent in the idea, and so I try and create an oppositional effect there is such value in space and in being present and in people and these kind of anything but commercial or monetary, and just I guess drawing attention to those, you know, precious entities that we all have in our lives, whether it's a space we don't recognise or just slowing down and enjoying a certain colour about a room or a material, or is there someone, you know, in your life that you just don't really stop and say thank you to, that, you know, has done so much for you. So just those kind of simple things that can easily go overlooked and, you know, have no kind of monetary value this is kind of what my work is stemming from.